What's up, B2? Capital G here. Got another awesome 4K deck profile for you guys to check out. This is Trickstars, but with a twist. And I like to think of the deck as Clash Stars. Maybe I just gave away the twist there, but for those of you who haven't figured it out yet, don't worry. You'll figure it out momentarily when we get to it. Trickstars are a deck that I think are a lot of fun. They can be super annoying to deal with, and there are actually multiple versions of Trickstars. I think that Trickstars get a bit of a bad rap just because of like the draw and lock combo, which yeah, it can be super annoying if your opponent hits you with that, but there are multiple ways of running Trickstars. You can run your pure burn variants with like Dark Room of Nightmare. You can run like simple control variants, and you know, Trickstars is an archetype that you can do a lot with because the core lineup of Trickstars that you have to run is really not like, it's not that it doesn't take up that much space, really just like a Risk, Lily Bell, and you know, the Trickstar Candina. So let's go ahead and jump right into the deck. So for the most part, a bit of the deck is fairly standard. You guys are going to notice a lot of the cards. Obviously, you've seen them before. 3 copies of Trickstar Candina. This is your Stratos, and it is not a hard once per turn, so you've seen it in the past be used with Brilliant Fusion and Arrival. Some people run things like Chain Summoning and whatnot, but I just like Trickstar Candina because not only is she a cutie, but she has awesome stats, and I mean, really, what is there not to like? She's not only Stratos, but she can search out your spells and traps, get the Field Spell, get Trickstar Reincarnation. When Trickstars get that Premature Burial, she'll be able to search that as well, so you're definitely going to run 3 copies of her forever, just like our next card, Trickstar Lycoris. Actually, maybe if people move towards the Link Summon version of Trickstars, they might not run 3 copies of Lycoris, but this is a version that is more primary focused, or it's primarily focused on doing like a lot of effect damage, burn damage. So Trickstar Lycoris, obviously a super good card, not just being able to do burn damage when your opponent draws, but the fact that she can kind of save your Lycoris from targeting. If you have Lycoris on the field, your opponent activates a targeting effect, you can summon her during your opponent's turn. She has pretty decent stats as well, being 1600, and that 200 extra boost from Trickstar Light Stage definitely helps, so I like to run 3 copies of her. I like to run 1 copy of Trickstar Lily Bell. I've ran Lily Bell at 2 before, and sometimes if you banish it from Pot of Desires, it does suck. The problem is if you run 2 Lily Bell, I've had so many duels where I open up like with these 2 cards, and it's just, it is so terrible because it's just like, oh man, if I was only running 1 Lily Bell, this would be a much stronger card. So yeah, 1 Lily Bell is good enough. There are a lot of shenanigans you can do with this card, especially when you combine it with the Trickstar Lycoris if that's in your graveyard. I do run the Gofu. I think that Trickstars is a deck that can definitely, like, Trickstars are one of those decks where if it ever has an open field, it can kind of OTK you with just a couple of cards. So if your opponent has like an open field and you have this plus Light Stage, or you have this plus Candina, a lot of times you can get near like game on board. So as long as you do it right and you make sure that you make a decode and you summon your monsters to the link points, like you can pretty much do that. So Yu-Gi-Oh 2017, unfortunately, we do got to run some hand traps. Let's try and get these. I'm trying to make sure we don't get a glare. Ash Blossom, basically like just the it card, the card in Yu-Gi-Oh that almost every deck runs 3 of. Pot of Desires is still too big of a deal, still too many searching cards. This can stop other monster effects that want a special summon. It can stop other hand traps, like it can stop Maxi, it can stop Gamma. So I don't think that there's a reason not to run 3 copies of Ash. Even if I was just running like a primary burn build, I would probably still run like 3 Ash. I'm talking like the Dark Room of Nightmare. I'd still run 3 Ash. 3 copies of Ghost Ogre, stopping your opponent, being able to stop like continuous spells, or not continuous spells or traps, being able to stop pendulum scales, being able to stop field spells is actually very important in Yu-Gi-Oh right now. You know, these cards are tuners, Ash Blossom and Ghost Ogre. I don't think I've ever like even thought of synchro summoning with them, but it's actually important. You can actually exceed with them, and Lycoris is a level 3, so that does actually come up on occasion, especially not so much with the Phantom Knights of Breaksword, but with Nightmare Shard. So 3 copies of that. Now, for the hand traps you're probably not used to seeing that much in Trickstars, well, I mean, I'm not going to act like these are so obscure, but I like Honest in this deck. The thing about it is, right, so what I like to do a lot of times is I just go like Candina, search out for Light Stage, and then go like Lycoris, and, you know, Lycoris will do the 400 burn damage, and maybe I might Reincarnation my opponent. Usually when you have Lycoris on the field, your opponent's first, like, thought is basically, their first instinct is to just ram into Lycoris. Like, no one really thinks about Honest anymore, even though all the Trickstars are light attributes. So Honest is like a saving grace, especially because not only do you get like a lot of damage, do you get that 800 or 1800 damage with your Lycoris, but then you get her on the field for another draw, you know what I mean? She gets to do more burn damage. So I think this card is really good, and if Trickstars can keep their monster on the board, it becomes so much easier for the deck to just win. You generally you expect a lot of times for your Trickstars to die relatively easily and then just bring them back with Reincarnation, but Honest, it gives you a nice little card that's just like a power punch out of nowhere. Maxi, obligatory, like best hand trap in the game. And moving on to the spells, of course, we play 3 copies of Trickstar Lycoris. I have a feeling this card might end up getting hit in the TCG. Like, it would not surprise me at all if Konami put this card to 1, because it is too good. Not just being able to lock one of your opponent's cards down, but being able to search. And then that 200 burn damage that you get is so relevant, especially like I've had games where I've opened with like double Lycoris plus like maybe a Reincarnation, and that 200 burn damage just being multiplied over and over and over again is so good. You know, in the draw phase, you hit them with that 200, and then off Reincarnation, you hit them with that 200, and then if they attack and maybe you have Honest, like the 200 ends up adding up, and sometimes you might end up doing like 1,000 damage just off of a field spell that already pays for itself upon activation, which is just like too good. So we play 3 copies of Terraforming. I don't generally play a lot of decks that play 3 copies of Terraforming. I wasn't like the biggest to rush into this, but in Trickstars, Terraforming equals Light Stage, and that equals a Rota. So you definitely want to run 3 copies of Terraforming in this build. And also, if you get your Candina, that can get you traps as well. 3 copies of Cosmic Cyclone. Rest in peace to Mystical Space Typhoon. This card is basically just a little better. Trickstars already have a decent amount of suppression, but you kind of do need ways of stopping your opponent's field spells. Like, you already have this to kind of lock down your opponent's back row if you're going for like a push or something like that, but sometimes Ash Blossom doesn't like cover everything, and Cosmic Cyclone is needed to like just basically get rid of like field spells when they activate. If you use Ash Blossom on something else, like maybe you used it on your opponent's Maxi, maybe you used it on their, you know, Pot of Desires or their Card of Demise or something. So I feel like Cosmic Cyclone can hit the other cards. And honestly, you could probably play 2 of this. Like, you can get away with 2. Sometimes I think maybe like 3 Scapegoats plus 2 Cosmic Cyclones is better. Here we got the tech cards. Well, this is obviously tech, not just Honest. Honest is what I think makes this deck a little more unique from most Trickstar builds. But yeah, this is the spicy tech right here, Clashing Souls. This card is so awesome. So basically what happens, because you can probably see there's so much text. Let me see if I can get it to focus. Yeah, there's just so much text on that damn card. Clashing Souls basically says if your opponent attacks you or you attack them, as long as you have the weaker monster, you can pay increments of 500 light points, and then your monster's attack goes up. And you kind of play this little ping pong game with your opponent where each of you can constantly pay 500 light points, and you don't take any battle damage from that attack. But what it does is whoever's monster ends up dying in battle, they lose every single card on their field, which is pretty damn devastating. And I like this card because Trickstars, it's very easy to get to a very early lead on your opponent because of Lycoris and because of Reincarnation. So a lot of times if you just have like this set, your opponent will just summon a random monster or something like that. They'll attack into a Lycoris. You flip this over and you kind of just go to the battle phase. And you'll always, like in the early game, Trickstar always has more life points than its opponents most of the time. So if you blow out your opponent's field, then usually that second turn, if they don't have anything, especially against like a pendulum deck, you're going to be able to OTK them because you have like Candina in your hand, plus you can search another Lycoris. They have an open field. So basically you just win. Don't get me wrong, it's a gimmicky card, but I like that gimmick. So 2 copies of Pot of Neg 9. Pot of Desires, obviously very solid. The only time the only card that I really care about when I banish it is Lilybell. Like, even if I banish my Maxi, this is not that it's like not that big of a deal because of all the other hand trap arenas that we run. 2 copies of Scapegoat. I love Scapegoat so much, but man, they got to put this card at 1. This card being 1 card Borreload is too good. Actually, Trickstars probably uses Scapegoat better than any deck because of the damage. If your opponent lets you resolve a Scapegoat and you have Candina, you win the duel. I think with the burn damage from Trickstar Lycoris, the 400 in the draw phase, I think it's like 90, it's either 91 or 9400. You turn this into Mistress Radiant plus 2 Link Spiders. You summon Candina. Candina gets your field spell, your light stage to do, you know, extra burn damage and extra effect damage. You attack with all the monsters, and then you go for Lycoris attacks as well. And then during your opponent's draw phase, 400 burn. But I believe that even without the draw phase, they're already dead. So yeah, this plus Candina is actually an OTK, which is pretty damn stupid. And then we play some field removal. Dark Hole and Regeki. Trickstars super struggle with really big monsters on the field. This version doesn't struggle with it as much because I do play 2 copies of Honest and I do play Clashing Souls, but things like Borlo Dragon are really difficult for Trickstars to get over, and yeah, I just don't want to lose to like those cards. Obviously, Trickstars will be getting an Honest soon. They got it in the OCG. When that card comes out, Carabine, I'm going to run 2 of that, so won't even have to run Honest anymore. To the trap cards, we have the 3 copies of my favorite card in the deck, which is Trickstar Reincarnation. Such lovely artwork on this. Shows your girl Holly Angel being, I guess, reincarnated. Like, really, I mean, the thing I like about Reincarnation has nothing to do with the little lame draw and lock bird play or anything like that. What I like about this card is the Monster Reborn effect. Even when your opponent ashes this, you still feel pretty good because it's a Monster Reborn that can activate during either player's turn. And a lot of times what I'll do is if my Lycoris gets like ran over, in main phase 2, my opponent might feel emboldened. They might search or something like that. They might activate, you know, like some type of search card, and I have like a light stage on the field. I'll banish this because I know I want to get my Lycoris back anyways, and you end up getting that burn damage, and that's important because even if you don't land any attacks with the Lycoris, when their turn comes around again, you get more burn damage. And sometimes, even though it's only small increments of 200 and maybe 400 if you have light stage, sometimes that actually ends up winning you the game. So yeah, light stage is like a 3 of right now, and I do actually go first with this deck. I don't usually go first in Yu-Gi-Oh that much, but in this particular version I do. We run a lot of Solemn cards in this deck. It's actually one of the only decks in Yu-Gi-Oh where I run the full Solemn Brigade, and it's simply because if your opponent is playing something like Pendulums, or if your opponent is playing a deck that really needs to like have 1 key search, like if you're playing against Invoked, like if you have a light stage and plus the Lycoris turn 1, and you can just like Solemn that 1 key play. If you can Solemn the Alistair, the Invoker, you can Solemn the Pendulum Summon, you a lot of times will just win. Like your opponent will just like set a card, pass, and Trickstars capitalize off of that. Like you're going to OTK your opponent at that point. You're gonna lock down whatever random back row they throw at you. You're going to summon the Candina again. You're going to attack with Candina, attack with Lycoris, attack with Lycoris again, do a bunch of burn damage in the draw phase. Almost certainly they're dead. So Solemns are super important in this deck. Not so great when you go second, but I mean, them be the breaks. That's, you know, it's not enough reason for me not to run Solemn. So to the extra deck, we run 1 Link Karibo because of the Scapegoat, and you can make it with Lilybell. I don't think that I've done that yet, but at this point I think that 3 copies of Link Spider, which I was running before. I don't think like Link Spider is necessary at 3 anymore. I was running it, but now that Link Karibo came out, it's just like a better card in my opinion. I don't think I've ever gone through all 3 copies of Link Spider, but yeah, it might happen to you. If you don't want to run Link Karibo, if you don't own one, you could just substitute it for a 3rd copy of your Link Spider. So those are the Link 1s. To the Link 2s. Oh yeah, waifu material. Holly Angel, you're definitely going to run that. Akashic, because it is relevant sometimes. Like a lot of your Trickstar monsters are what, fairy type, and then Honest is a fairy type as well. You've got Proxy Dragon, just basically to climb with like Gofu and whatnot. And we have a couple copies of Mistress Radiant. I was thinking about dropping Mrs. Radiant to 1, but sometimes with Scapegoat, like, you might actually, I don't know, depending on like what is on your field, you might actually make like double Mrs. Radiant. So I feel like one Mrs. Radiant is, there are going to be times where you like want the second Mrs. Radiant. Oh, that's, you know what, that's another reason why you probably don't need to run 3 Link Spiders is your what's it called? I was actually thinking that this could add Maxi back, which it can, Maxi's Earth, but the Mrs. Radiant, when it is destroyed, can add back a Link Spider into your extra deck. So that's it. To the Link 3s, we have Gaia, Deco Talker, and Ningirasu. You know what my favorite is out of these 3? My favorite is actually Gaia. I make Gaia so much. Like in some of my decks where I run Scapegoat, I've actually dropped Deco Talker simply because of that whole effect thing. But I'm telling you, man, like if you can make like Gaia plus a Link Spider, dude, that is so much damage. Or if you can make like Mrs. Radiant plus Gaia, it's a lot of damage, man. And I like the fact that Gaia just points down. It does not point up towards your opponent, so they can potentially cheese you if you're not able to cheese them and ultimately kill them. So yeah, just like that. And to our, what's it called? Oh, okay, let's push those to the side. There we go. And then ultimately to our Link 4s, we play Borolo Dragon, my favorite Link 4 in Yu-Gi-Oh! And then we play Firewall Dragon just because of the cheese OTK. If the cheese OTK with Firewall Dragon, Lily Bell, and Lycoris was not out, then I would not run Firewall Dragon. It's a strong card, but I don't know. I feel like you need it, and it works better in like more turbo decks. But because of that one simple play, I feel like you definitely need it. And I've said this in other videos. Borolo Dragon backed up by like Asylum can basically be a win condition. Then finally we have our Scapegoat. Oopsie, fail. I forgot that we have Xyz in this deck. Sorry. Sometimes I forget like the order mechanics are actually useful. We have Phantom Knights of Break Sword. I've summoned this a couple of times because you do run so many level 3s, Ash Blossom, Ghost Ogre, and Lycoris, especially considering Lycoris can be summoned back from the graveyard so easily, and Nightmare Shark. Do not play this deck without this card. I'm telling you, man, there will be times where you will win duels because of this card. You might even have times where you like normal summon Ash Blossom, then get Lycoris back from the graveyard and attack for 2,000, which is a big deal in this deck. So to me, this card is actually more valuable. And then finally, what I meant to do like 20 seconds ago, boom, we got Go tokens. And in every deck where I play Scapegoats, I'm using these Go tokens because I bought them, they look nice, and I got to pretty much use them for something. So there is the deck. And I actually thought about, there's another gimmicky card out there that I keep looking at, and I sometimes want to add it to the deck, and that's the Contract with Don 1000. I'm like, man, this card seems really good on paper, but I'm just not quite sure. So maybe I'll end up putting it in the future. And if Trickstars ultimately change a ton with the new ban list for January or whenever the hell we get that, then I'll obviously update this deck. So whatever you guys thought, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already. Turn on that notification bell for daily videos. And for anyone who says that these videos are not in 4K, because yes, they are, tell me that this is not 4K. Seriously, you can actually see the hairs on my hand. Like, that is 4K, especially when it actually focuses.